Welcome to Beyond the Fear, a space for rebels and dreamers, healers and soul seekers, light workers and rule breakers, artists and creators who are ready to break free from fear and live a life that turns them on. Hey, I'm Nadine Zamot, and in my early 20s, I broke free from an oppressive culture in the Middle East that was suffocating my free spirit and denying me the ability to follow my intuition. I now embrace a life that exceeds my wildest imagination, and my mission is to guide you to do the same. My unique method brings together practical aspects of money coaching, energetics, trauma and nervous system healing, spirituality, and inner child work. And as a result, my clients are now able to follow their desires and tap into the richness of life, elevating not just themselves, but also their communities. This podcast is about integrating and healing our shadow parts to amplify our essence and live life guided by our intuition. My guests and I will be sharing our stories and wisdom to help guide you to embracing and living life passionately, because there's nothing sexier in life than a person who embraces their authentic power. The world needs you to show up as you, in your power, in your authenticity, your imperfections, your rebellion, and in your truth. Because if this little girl from Jordan can do it, so can you. So now, what about you? What's waiting for you beyond the fear? Hello everyone, welcome to Beyond the Fear podcast. I am your host, Nadine Zamot, and with me today I've got a very special guest, a personal friend of mine, Kayla Smith. Kayla and I, we did circus together, we worked at the same university back in New Orleans, and then I fell in love with her little dog, Harry. He's always going to be in my heart and Arby's heart, and that's how we connected. We used to take the doggies out for walks, and Arby, our little doggy, she's not very friendly with other dogs, but she just fell in love with Harry because Harry was the best. Good old Harry. Hey, Kayla. How's it
Hi.
going? Welcome.
Thank you so much. How are you?
I'm good. I'm all right. Just here in Melbourne, Australia. I think today it's trying to be warm. What's it like in New Orleans?
It is quite cold,
Oh,
surprisingly. It
wow.
has not
Really?
been cold, so it's a big surprise.
Ah,
Yes.
well, at the time of recording, this is December, well, it's 19th, December 19th, so mid-December here. And that's quite surprising for New Orleans, isn't it?
Yes,
Crazy.
it is.
Wow. So, Kayla has done this amazing 5-month trip. Was it 5 and a bit?
Yes.
To Europe that she just arrived back from a week ago. And I like to first ask my guests this very general question. So this question that doesn't need to have anything to do with the trip or anything. But Kayla, what turns you on in life?
Definitely travel.
Uh-huh.
Always travel, which I have not had many opportunities to do in the way that I've always wanted to do until now. So it's been particularly exciting to
Yeah.
have this opportunity. And writing and reading. My education backgrounds is in writing, which is not the most lucrative of career choices. So it has always been sort of bubbling in the back of my mind, like looking for ways to be writing more than I am ever actually writing.
Yeah.
And so I think a big part of me doing this trip was kind of thinking of it as like this writer's retreat, like this chance to go and explore and be writing at the same time.
You do have a nice blog, and I would love the link for that so I can link it in the show
Absolutely.
notes because
Thank you.
you do have a very special way of writing and a very special way of looking at the world.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
yeah, of course. We've gone on somehow long hikes, and you've shared a lot of your viewpoints with me, and I was like, this chick's quite interesting. So I'm excited for the listeners to learn some wisdom from you and just look at the way you look at life, because life is not the same. It's for everyone. It's really by the lens and perspective by which we view it from.
Yeah.
And in one of your blog posts, or I don't know, I'm not sure where you shared that, but you said from being a little girl from Mississippi, you never imagined that all of these travel opportunities are open for you. And that really struck a chord with me because I grew up in the Middle East in Jordan, and it was in the 80s, and that wasn't a thing that I can even imagine for myself. Like wow, traveling and just like going from one country to another.
Yeah.
And I think back then it wasn't as trendy and like cool as it is now. But I never imagined that a girl from Mississippi on the other side of the world, maybe a little bit later than me, because you're a bit younger than me, but that had the same thought, because I thought everybody outside of Jordan is actually free. It's just Jordan that was holding me back, but
Right.
actually it really wasn't. After I left Jordan, I was like, oh my God, this is an international issue.
Yeah.
Like, not issue, but So tell me about your experience with being the little girl from Mississippi who wanted to travel.
Yeah, so I grew up in very rural Mississippi, like a town too small to have its own mailing address, like a tiny community.
What? Wow.
Yeah, like 2,000 people maybe. And I think I was very introverted, very shy, and I spent so much of my time just reading. I wanted to read everything. And I think that through reading, I was sort of exposed to the broader world. And so that was like my version of travel, just like reading about these places that I could imagine in my mind. And I did not have a family who traveled. I don't think anyone in my extended family had a passport.
Wow.
And I didn't know anyone who traveled internationally. Like I came from a place where travel meant driving 3 or 4 hours to the Florida Panhandle to the beach,
Okay.
or to like the Smoky Mountains, places that were easy driving distance. And that's what travel meant. And it was the same vacation that everyone took, and they took the same vacation each year. And that I had no other perception of what people like me could do that would be called travel. And so it was
People
something.
like you. What does people
Yes.
like you mean?
People who did not have seemingly infinite money, or people who I was not watching on TV on the Travel Channel. People who grew up the way that I did in communities where travel was not emphasized in any capacity. No one went away for college. It's the type of southern small town where people grow up and everyone knows everyone else and stays close together. And that was what I knew growing up. And I always knew that I wanted to travel, and I did not have any concept of what that would look like how I would get to a point where I could feasibly make that happen for myself. And it wasn't until I went away to college. I went to college in Rhode Island, which was like no different than if I had gone to college across the actual planet. People thought this was insane. Like, what are you doing going up there?
Was it intentional? Did you choose to apply there because you wanted to go a little bit far away from home?
I went to Brown, and I wanted to go there specifically to Brown because it was a very unique college because of their curriculum. They have an open curriculum where they don't have like core requirements. And so there were a lot of reasons that school specifically, but this was still like going far away was just wild to everyone in my family. And I think once I got to college, that was the first time that I saw people my age who were traveling internationally and met people who were from places that were not the rural South.
Wow. Yeah.
And I think just being, for the first time, in a culture very different than what I had come from made me feel like, there's got to be a way that I can travel as well. And I think at that time, I definitely thought, well, it's money that's going to hold me back from doing that, because so many of the people I was in college with were had far more money than I had. I was there on very large financial scholarship, and so it's sort of imposter syndrome, like, oh well,
Of course.
but they have this infinite money, like how am I going to do that? And so it's just been kind of re-teaching myself, like, no, that doesn't have to be the barrier that I assumed.
Wow, how
It
did
would
you
be.
reteach yourself that? How did you do that?
Um, a very long story of how I ended up traveling abroad for the first time. Basically, I had hoped to do a study abroad program. Ended up not getting to do that study abroad program because I had applied to a program, I had gotten accepted to it, I had kind of figured out a way where I thought financially it could happen. And my dad ended up having a heart attack the semester beforehand. He is fine, he is well and fine, but it was, he was out of work for a very long time. It was very much a hugely big deal. And it was not apparent immediately that he was going to be fine. So a lot of chaos, financial chaos, just general chaos. And so it quickly became apparent I wasn't going to be able to study abroad. Like, my parents weren't going to be able to financially help me do that program anymore.
Okay.
And after that, I kind of on a whim, I was like, well, I guess it won't hurt for me to look at other options. And I Googled like jobs abroad that I could feasibly do, like that I might be qualified to do, which wasn't much. But basically, I started looking for like summer camp jobs or like resident advisor jobs for high school programs. And I, by some miracle, ended up getting a job offer for the summer before my senior year of college, where I got to go be a resident advisor in Italy for the whole summer. And it was paid. I wasn't getting paid a lot,
Wow.
but I was like, I could
Yeah.
go. Like, my room and board were included,
That's so
which is
good.
all I wanted. And so that, like, getting to do that, I was 21. That was the first time I ever had a passport. And having the chance to do that and feeling like, wow, I figured out a way to make that happen. I also got lucky, but like, I figured that out. And
Yeah.
I think feeling like, okay, even if there are obstacles in the way, even if, a door closes, that doesn't mean that you can't figure out a way to still like obtain whatever the goal is. And I think that really gave me a lot of courage to kind of, keep pursuing similar things and feeling like, well, I did that. I can keep traveling. I can go back. I can keep like making that happen. I can figure out ways.
Yeah, once you did it,
Yeah.
you now, you've given yourself proof, tangible proof that it's
Exactly.
doable. And I wonder how many other people from your small town in Mississippi, or even not from there, that you have given that shred of evidence and proof that it's possible for them too. Because when we just follow that instinct, it's not really something, yes, we think we're doing it just for ourselves, but honestly, we're expanding what is possible for others too, because they just look at what we're doing and they're like, oh wow, if she can do it, I can do it. How did you do it?
I hope
You know?
so. Yeah, I
Well,
hope
I'm
so.
sure that you have influenced many others. Do you remember while you were Google searching and doing all of that? Do you remember what state of mind were you in? Were you just like really calm about it, or were you frantic? Like, how old? So you were 21. So
I was
back then,
21.
if we were to just like time travel to Kayla, age 21, what state of mind were you in?
I think there were a lot of mixed emotions. I think there was certainly a feeling of, well, first of all, relief after we knew my dad was going to be okay. And then
Yeah.
there was sort of the feelings of, defeat and sadness of like, oh,
Yeah, some
things
grief.
have changed in a way that, things won't play out the way I hoped they would. But I think after that, like after those feelings, it was more just like this resolution, like, okay, on to the next step. Just keep going and figure it out. And I think because I didn't have an expectation of it working,
Oh,
I
wow.
didn't
Yeah.
feel any like
You weren't attached, not too attached.
frantic. I mean, I hoped very much, but I did not. I had no idea if anyone would. I had never had a job before. I had no idea if someone would
Oh my
like take me
goodness, yes.
seriously. And so I was just sending these blind emails that were like, "Hey, you know nothing about me, but do you ever hire resident advisors?" Like, I was emailing people where jobs weren't even posted.
Jesus, that's
And it was one
amazing.
of those jobs that I got. It wasn't a job that was posted. I just emailed the director. I didn't even know like the gender. I just knew like a last name. And I just
To whom
emailed
it
this
may
person.
concern.
Yeah. And that's how I got it. That's how I got it. And a lot of things just sort of fell into place. I ended up being hired by the international boarding school that hired me coincidentally had a partnership with my university that I didn't know they had.
Wow.
Until
So,
afterward.
wow. That's incredible. So you
Yeah.
did the heavy lifting, but then let's say the universe
That I didn't have to do. Yeah.
But the universe met you halfway.
Yeah.
But you
Yeah.
just had to make that decision and not give up. That's just I don't know if I knew that about you. What tenacity.
Yeah.
That's incredible. And then you did your Italy stint, and after that you came back home, or what happened?
Yes. So I worked in Italy as a resident advisor that summer, and then they asked me back the next summer. The next summer I went and did the same job essentially, but I did it for half the summer in Spain and half the summer
Yeah.
in Italy.
Oh,
So I got to do that back to back
sounds
summers.
awful.
Right.
So only recently, well, it wasn't that recent. I remember back in 2019, we were out for a walk, and you had shared with me that all you want to do is quit your job and just travel and travel
Yes.
and travel nonstop.
Yes.
And again, so much happened back then
Right.
that changed your plans, but
Yes.
you persisted. So if you feel comfortable,
Yeah.
can we go back to that time of your life? So
Yeah, of course.
3.5 years ago.
So 2019, so it had been like seven years, several years, I think 7 years, from when I worked that last summer job in Europe that I had done any international travel. I'd been to Canada, but I had not gone overseas.
Yeah.
And had very much wanted to, but it was there were a lot of obstacles. I went to graduate school. I kind of jumped right into doing jobs and then summer jobs. Between my full-time teaching jobs, I was working in education. And I never felt that there was the time, like time off work, or the money, or if I was like between jobs, I felt like I needed to be desperately looking for a new job. So there had just not been the time to travel. I did not feel like I had the financial ability to travel in the way that I wanted to be. And I think probably sometime around, I don't know, 2017 or so, I just came to this decision where I basically thought to myself, you know what? I'm working in education. If I continue working in education, I'm never going to be paid like an exorbitant amount of money. I'm never going to have an amount of money that feels like it's enough money to travel. So I can either travel without feeling that, or I can not travel. So I'm just going to travel. I'm just going to do that.
Whoa, epic. Yep.
Yeah. So, but I still had to, request time off of work and this whole formal
The
process.
permission.
Yes, it wasn't that easy, but I did come to that decision, and in 2019, right before the pandemic started, like the pandemic had started, we just didn't know it. Like I think
we were unaware,
probably
oblivious.
I think the week I got home from this trip was the first time I heard COVID-19 on the news. But right at the very end of 2019, I went on my first ever solo trip, because I don't count those summer jobs as solo trip. Like I was going to do a job. So I went on my first ever solo trip abroad, and I went for like 3 weeks to Morocco and Portugal.
Good
And
choices.
yes, and while I was doing that, while I was on that trip, I vividly remember thinking, this isn't enough. Like, this isn't long enough. This is just like a taste. This is a teaser. I want to do this more. And it was on that trip, like as wonderful of a time as I was having, I was already like planning the next one, like something bigger, something longer.
Yes,
And
I know exactly what that means. That's exactly how I felt when I landed in New Orleans. It's like,
really,
cute, I'm here only for 10 days. This is not the end of it.
I didn't know. Wait, did you only stay 10 days or did you stay?
No, so I was there in 2015 for my birthday, and the plan was to stay for 10 days. But while I was there, I knew it's not going to just be the 10 days. I knew it's TBC, it's to be continued. I didn't know how, I didn't know why, because I'm a very logical Virgo. I'm like, but why? But why? But why? I'm like, I'm not supposed to know why. I'm not supposed to know how. I knew that there was a continuation. So I was already planning my next trip, thinking that it's going to be in 1 or 2 years back to New Orleans. Okay. But what had happened was that I came back to Melbourne because that's where I was living at the time. And it was haunting me. Like, if I were walking in the street, I would imagine myself, I'm there, but in a very weird, vivid way, not like just my imagination. So I was like, I think I'm being called back. And then this one time, like maybe a week after I got back, I went to a concert in the city, and there was walking out of the concert, there was two guys behind me chatting to themselves, like amongst themselves. And one guy said to his friend, he goes, I'm going to be in New Orleans for Jazz Fest next April. And that was October. I looked behind me and I said, you know what? Me too. And that was only that's 7 months away. And I also wanted to do a big trip. I wasn't going to just go for 10 days. I wanted it to be for 3 months. And that's what happened. So 7 months later, like so much happened that taught me a lot about myself and created my business, and all of that just from the whole thing of like saying, yes, okay, I believe you, universe, I am going to be there. So just that in its own was a massive learning curve.
That's amazing.
And I got there and it turned out into...
And that's where you stayed. Yeah.
3 years, not 3 months, 3 years. And that's, and you know the rest. So I know what you mean. Like this, this is a taster. This is... something's calling me to do more. For me, it was the location. For you, it was the call for adventure, the hero's journey. So.
Yeah. I think so. Yeah, and then I got home, and like returning to work was
heavy,
challenging after taking that much time off. My bosses were very nice, but like, oh, this was maybe not the best time. I'm like, I know, but they were very kind to let me do that. But I think I knew already there's going to be a time, like when I do a bigger trip, I can't take time off work. Like I'm going to have to arrange and plan in a capacity where I'm quitting a job. Like I'm between jobs. And so I was thinking about that already. And I didn't have like a specific timeline in mind but it was like as soon as I feel like I financially can do it. And then, then the pandemic started. Which in a way, I mean, that was the only reason I was able to save the money to do it.
Just on that, having been an employee in Australia and an employee in America, there is such a big push in Australia to travel and see the world and use your annual leave. We actually obviously get more annual leave here. You begin with 4 weeks and then it accumulates. There's like 10 days a year of sick leave, and then every workplace gives you 10 to 17% on top of your salary into your retirement fund with zero contribution from you. So it's quite cushy here for employees, I have to say. But from the very beginning, I remember my university job at Melbourne Uni, so that was before we met at Tulane. One of the first things I was asked was, so Nadine, tell me, where do you want to go this year so that we can put the annual leave in? I was like, I'm not used to that. And I thought that's the same way everywhere. So when I got my job several jobs in America, not just the
Yeah.
one where we met.
Mhm.
But I was always like, so I'm gonna start this day, and I would need this, and that off for my birthday. And then they were like, no, that's not how it works here. Why would you want to do
Yeah, like
that?
wide-eyed. Yeah.
Yeah, like what do you mean you want to travel, and why do you want to travel? I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, but where we used to work, they were quite
Mhm.
open-minded actually.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was a
Great
nice
people.
uni, great people, very
Mhm.
open-minded, very, it was like I had a taste of Australia there where people were kind
Mhm.
of, what's the word, like encouraging you to see the
Mhm.
world a little bit because
Yeah.
they also had placements and they're doctors, professors. I
Yeah.
mean, it's not an education thing, it's a cultural thing. You know,
Right.
Americans don't travel like Australians do.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I mean, the time off, the actual number of days
yeah,
off, that was the
exactly.
barrier.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
if you want more, you need to kind of suck it up and do your mathematics and geometry and acrobatic budgeting so that you can take time off, like leave without pay kind of thing. So it is more
Mhm.
painful. So I do understand how being in the States is a little bit more
Mhm.
painful to take all that time as it is here. But
Yeah.
also what you were saying, which is great, is that sometimes you don't want a limit, you don't want that time off to end.
Right.
So this is when you actually just put your big girl panties on and you tell us about how you saved for this trip. So you were
Yes.
saying the pandemic helped. So
It did help, which is
mhm,
sort of a morbid,
it is. It's
it's a, like
quite
a,
morbid.
because and it makes me feel guilty to even be like, oh, this positive thing that happened to me.
I know. There's positives and negatives that happen to
Sure,
everyone during that time.
sure, that's
Yeah.
yeah, but as bad as the time was, it was really because of the student loan pause that
Oh,
I was
okay.
putting the money that I typically would be paying my student loans with into savings that I knew was specifically for this trip. And then there were just ways that I was sort of able to add extra onto that money. I had a little bit more time on my hands after the probably first year of the pandemic when work became very chaotic because it became remote. After that, I started trying to cobble together some extra like side hustle jobs. I was editing
Got it.
books on
Yeah.
the side. I did some like additional education related work to get some extra money, and I was just putting all of that into the savings pile that I knew I was going to take my big trip with, and kind of obsessively budgeting to decide exactly how much I thought that I needed, like what my minimum was going to be to feel like I could do it and feel
Yeah.
comfortable enough to do it, because I knew I wanted to go for 5 or 6 months if possible.
Wow.
And
That's
that time
incredible.
even extended. Like I started with like 3 months, and then I was like, oh, but now I'm not going to be able to leave as soon as I thought, so maybe I could go for 4 months. Like it kept getting larger because I kept being able to save a little bit more because of the obstacles that were popping up that were preventing me from going
Got it.
on the trip.
So divine timing, pretty much.
Yeah.
Just a side note, can
Hmm.
you tell us briefly, quickly about the beautiful things you and little Harry used to do, leaving the letters around in your neighborhood during the pandemic?
Yeah.
That was so cute.
The
So,
pandemic had just started. I lived alone, just
mm-hmm.
me and Harry, which, just to paint this visual, Harry was a dog that I adopted when he was 15. He was heartworm positive, like very ill, and he was totally deaf. He had 4 teeth, so his tongue hung out. So he was just this little, like, strange goblin, and I adored him. And we would walk around town, and I would just write little anonymous letters and put them in the little free libraries that were, like, in the neighborhood. And it was so cute because people would find them and they would write me letters back.
Oh, that's
And,
so
like,
cute.
they would either put them back in the little libraries, like I would get like coloring book pages from kids, or like
Oh.
I would leave my Instagram handle or like my email address, or sometimes I would get these emails. I think so many people were just so lonely
Starving
and
for connection
Yeah,
Yeah, they
and
were
I got
shocked back
so
then.
many messages, so many sweet messages, and it was like a horrifying time, but also a special time in some
Yeah,
ways
there was
because of that.
some beauty, some
Hmm.
peaks of beauty that came through, some connectedness that we
Yeah.
all were craving. And yeah, oh, little Harry. I wasn't crying when you were talking about Harry. You were.
Oh,
We all loved little Harry. He
Harry,
was the
yes.
sweetest. Again,
Harry died in April, the end of April
hmm
of 2020. So we had
yeah,
kind of that first lockdown part of the
yeah,
pandemic together, and it was like this very special gift because I didn't have to go to work, so I just got to be with him for like all of those last months. So it was very bittersweet, but
yeah.
happy memories there too.
Very happy memories. Harry was just he was a bowl of happiness and so sweet. Such a sweet little boy. Um, yeah. Okay. Gathering my thoughts back up. So now tell us about when it was go time. So you knew that the borders are opening.
Yeah.
Um,
So, well, then there came more obstacles because
okay, tell us more about that.
it was time. I thought it was go time. I thought, okay, I've like almost got the money. I think I have enough money that I can do this on like shoestring budget, but it
Okay.
feels like enough.
Mm-hmm.
In retrospect, I'm glad I didn't try to do it with that amount of money. But at the
What was
time, I was
that
like,
amount of
it's
money,
enough.
if you feel comfortable
Um,
disclosing?
I think I decided that I think I was planning for shorter, I guess. So maybe it would have been like just enough, but it wouldn't have
Mm-hmm.
given me any cushion. I
Yeah.
think I was saying if I had like maybe 8 or 9 thousand.
Okay.
I really can't remember. Which like if nothing had gone wrong, and if no weird expensive had popped up, if there was nothing out of the ordinary, I could have done it, but I
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't have had like the freedom to be as flexible as I wanted to be, or kind of stay in
Yeah.
the places I wanted to stay. So I thought it was time, and this was right at the point where the vaccines had
Mm-hmm.
just come out. Everyone had just gotten vaccinated, but it was pre-Delta. So
Okay.
everybody was
Yeah.
like, everything's amazing. Like the vaccines actually stopping people from getting COVID. Everything's great. I was like going to restaurants for the first time in however long, a year.
Mm-hmm.
And two things happened at the same time, which is that my mom was diagnosed with cancer, and then the Delta variant, like immediately afterward, the Delta variant arrived. And so, of course, everything changed. Every priority changed, just every plan changed. And my mom, I already had a plane ticket. I actually had a plane ticket.
Oh, yeah.
I had not told my work yet that I was leaving, but because I had bought a plane ticket way in advance.
Always that. It's always like
Hmm.
I've done all the plans. I just need to
Right.
kind of tell them.
And it was I was going to give them way more than 2 weeks notice, but
Yeah.
it wasn't time yet.
Mm-hmm.
And so when my mom got the news that she had cancer, I was like, well, clearly I'm not going on this trip.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not even thinking about, like, that's just on the back burner. And at the time, I ended up, I had a ticket that I could change without added
Lucky.
fees. So yeah, always buy economy, not basic economy. I just changed the flight
Yeah.
at that point. I had no idea when I would actually get to go, but I changed the flight. I think it was originally going to be August. And I changed that flight to like the end of December. So kind of gave myself those months thinking, maybe if everything goes super well, as we hope it
With your
can
mom.
with my
Yeah.
mom, maybe she can be done with treatment, maybe which did not happen. The treatment sequence that she had to do like a few rounds of chemo and radiation and then some big surgeries, and the surgeries didn't even happen until after Christmas. So it was kind of it became apparent to me in the fall, like, okay, that timeline's not going to happen. So I
Okay.
pushed the date back again. And so it kept being, basically, she was doing cancer treatments for a year, like a year to the day. She actually finished her last major surgery on the anniversary, the year anniversary of the day she was diagnosed.
Jesus, wow.
And so, but she's fine. She is cancer free, totally successful. It was a year of treatment, but she is cancer free. And I think at the point at which I knew that she was cancer free, she wasn't like totally back to her normal self,
Yeah,
but she
but
was
safe
fine.
enough. Yeah.
And she never wanted me to delay the trip. She's like, you can't. Oh, she
Really?
really wanted me to go. I
Oh,
think she really
wow.
wanted me to never even postpone it. And I was like, of course,
Are you
obviously I'm
serious? That's
postponing it.
incredible. Yeah, obviously, but
Obvious.
that's
But no,
incredible. Your
she was
mom's
just
like,
like,
just keep going. Go,
she was
girl.
like, you've always
Wow.
wanted to. I don't want you to change those plans because of me. That's your dream. Very supportive, which was amazing. And yeah, so I pushed the trip back several times, and finally my new date was June of this year, June
Yeah.
2020. So it was originally going to be August of 2021. So it was like a full.
No, it was originally gonna, well, yeah, you're right. Like
Yeah.
2019 was a decision. So
Yeah.
you left work. Where was
Yeah.
your first stop?
So I quit work. So I gave my work, totally quit. I left my apartment.
Bye.
I left
Yeah.
my apartment that I was renting. Just left everything, you know.
Left everything. Yeah.
And my boyfriend, who I am in a relationship, and I feel like a lot of people assume that solo travel means that you don't have anyone to go with, or you can't find
That's a
someone to
very
go with
good
you.
point. Yeah.
And for
Solo
me, it was
travel
like,
is a choice
it's
sometimes.
it's
Yeah.
a specific thing. And
It's
it wasn't that I didn't want to travel with my boyfriend. He actually came and joined me for 6 weeks of the 5 months, and that was wonderful. But it was like those were
Yeah.
separate activities with different goals, and
And your mom joined you as well,
she
which
joined me
was
for the
I was so
last
happy to
couple
see
of
that,
weeks, which was
because I know the
amazing.
story.
Yeah.
But your intention to solo travel, so to solo travel, obviously sometimes we don't have a choice but to do it on our own.
Right.
Sometimes people meet people online just to have someone to travel with, and that's fine too. But the practice of solo travel is more about the intention of being
Yes.
with yourself.
Yeah. And I think, and a lot of people, that's not something that is attractive to everyone.
It's true.
And I
Very
think
true.
figuring out a way to deliver the information to my boyfriend, which he knew from the time we first met each other, which was like early in the pandemic. He knew that I wanted to do this trip, but like making sure that it was clear, like, it's not that I don't want to travel with you, it's that here's what it means to me to be solo.
What does it mean to you to solo travel?
um my 2-hour monologue. I think that solo traveling is such a specific kind of learning experience, and such a specific type of freedom that you don't have any other time. And to me, it's such an inspiring thing and such a motivating thing, and I think the challenge of it is very attractive to me. And I think definitely there's an aspect of the challenge that is missing when you're with people. And there's plenty of wonderful reasons to travel with a partner, or with a group, of
Friends,
course.
yeah.
It's just a different thing. And I think I really wanted the challenge of it. I wanted the lessons that I knew I would learn. I wanted to. I feel like solo traveling has given me such like resiliency and taught me such resourcefulness. And I'm a person who, I'm still very introverted, and I'm a person who I don't need like the social component of something like traveling. I don't I knew that if I was traveling with someone, with my boyfriend, with a friend, I would be much more likely to like cling to them socially, or use them as like a
Yeah.
social bridge. I wouldn't be
Yeah.
meeting people if I was traveling with someone in the way
You're
that
right. Yeah.
I
It's
would kind of
different.
be forced to if I were totally alone. And it's like really pushing me out of my comfort zone in a way that I want it to be
I
pushed.
wouldn't have met Tommy, my husband, had I not been solo traveling.
Yeah.
If I was, so we met at a concert, Go Tour were playing. And if I were with like a bunch of friends, I would not even have paid attention to him. I
Yeah.
was a free agent
Yeah.
out there having fun, talking to people, and that's what I was doing before I was traveling. So back in like just going back to Melbourne,
Hmm.
I was intentionally doing things alone at night. Lucky Melbourne is a very
Yeah.
safe place and
Hmm.
public transport runs all the time.
Hmm.
So what I would do is that I would find shows, concerts, parties that I don't really know anyone that is
Hmm.
going, but the whole theme or the concert or the band is actually interesting for me.
Hmm.
I would actually take myself intentionally on my own.
Yeah.
I wouldn't tell anyone, even though maybe a friend might want to come, but I would actually go on my own. I had a thing where I made sure I only drank soft drinks because I didn't want to get
Yeah.
drunk on my own.
Yeah.
I didn't feel safe doing that. And I met so many people
Hmm.
doing that. People
Hmm.
ask me, how do you have so many friends? I said, well, it's because I always just go towards a thing that attract my attention, that tickle
Hmm.
my interest, and I go alone. Because
Yeah.
that aloneness, that solo factor is right there outside of your comfort zone, and it stretches you and challenges you, and it makes you meet people that you wouldn't have met otherwise.
Absolutely. Yeah. I
Hmm.
totally feel that. And I feel like it's such a self-selecting group of people that you meet who are also solo traveling, and those are the people who you like want to be meeting because
It's
those
true.
are people who have some sort of deep incentive inside them in the same way that you do to be doing this thing that seems bizarre to a lot
Yeah.
of other people.
And hanging around the house, for example, on your own is very different because
Hmm.
you're not taking yourself like outside of your comfort zone altogether to a
Yeah.
new place. So it does not need to be this 5 month, 6 month trip. I
Yeah,
know that we
absolutely.
are privileged to be able to do that.
Sure.
But just a few days, just on your own, left to your own devices.
Absolutely.
Sometimes you get these, you're the inner critic, there's like a little bit of chit chat happening in your brain, but then it resides and it goes away and you start understanding and knowing yourself more and you build that resiliency like you were saying and
Hmm.
you really really build that self-trust muscle
Hmm.
and that intuition becomes very sharp once you start practicing that
Yeah.
intentionally. Did you
Yeah.
feel that?
Absolutely. I think absolutely. I mean, I think that even for some people, even doing something like eating in a restaurant alone
Yeah. Oh
is
yeah.
is this awkward, terrible idea. And I think so quickly you just lose like any notion of that. It's just like not a thing. And everything it feels so freeing to just be like I do whatever I
I
want
can do what
and
I
there's
want
no
when I
like
want. Mhm.
yeah,
I'm not, stuck with by the hip with anybody, and I could just do.
absolutely. Hmm.
It's so good. Yeah. Wow. Wow. So, what did you learn about yourself in the past 5 months?
Oh, so many things. I think that I was so burnt out from the pandemic, from the stress of the last few years, from the job I had been doing. Though I loved the job, it was just it had become
It was grueling. It was a grueling job. It's a good place,
as
but
well, especially during the pandemic when everything went remote overnight and the job itself really
yeah.
intensified the needs of the students that I was working with intensified, and I think just all of it combined created a lot of burnout, and I had been very much neglecting things that I wanted to be prioritizing,
Mm-hmm.
like writing.
Mm-hmm.
Writing was the big one, and while on this trip, I I've had a blog for years, but I knew that I wanted to be blogging in a really different way and like
Okay.
more regularly, more intentionally, and kind of treating it like a travel blog. So I started doing that at the beginning of the trip, and the words just kept
You
flowing,
were you were in the
Um,
channel. That's excellent. Yeah.
yes, and so writing, and then I ended up, in addition to just like the blogging and the journaling and just kind of writing about my trip, I ended up towards the end of the trip, or like the second half of the trip, I started working on a long fiction manuscript
You really.
and I've not written. I have an MFA in creative nonfiction, but I haven't written fiction since undergrad, and so to me this was like the reawakening of these things that have been my deepest and truest loves, but that I have felt like I haven't had time for and just kind of buried, like really set aside to be, you know, making a salary and like living
Yeah.
my comfortable normal life.
Yeah.
And I think being on the trip just sort of freed me of that and just really helped me not so much learn, but like remember what my priorities and should be that I had neglected for a long time. It brought me a lot of clarity, I think, about that and like what I want to prioritize moving forward and kind of what to look for in whatever job I end up doing in the
Oh,
future, which I
wow.
don't know what that's going to be yet.
Free agent. That's
Yeah.
wonderful. Really, that really is wonderful. It reconnected you with yourself. We reminded you of what really ignited your soul, what sets your
Yeah.
soul on fire. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I'm curious about something, and then
Hmm.
we'll one more question, then we'll
Yeah.
wrap up. I'm curious, have you had moments during your travel where you were so awestruck by something you have tasted or smelt or seen visually that a part of you, that little girl stuck in a rural town in Mississippi, was
Hmm.
like, is this really my life? Have you had these
Oh
moments?
gosh, so many.
Yeah?
So many, so many of these moments.
Yeah, that's
um,
brilliant.
and I feel like, so I backpacked. I started in Scotland and I moved down through a little bit of Western Europe, very quickly got to Eastern Europe, where I spent most of my trip. So
Yeah.
I was in, my boyfriend joined me for the Balkans and Turkey and Greece. And then I went up through like Bulgaria, Romania. All of this was solo. Kind of went back down through Croatia, Italy. So, and I finished up with my mom. She joined me for the last 2 weeks of the trip. She joined me in Italy, and then we went to Christmas markets in
Yay.
Central Europe together. And my mom, she got a passport to do this trip, and I had begged her for 10 years to come to Europe with me. Like, it can be more affordable than you think. Like, it's not, like, I promise you can do it. And she wanted very much to go, but she had these barriers, in her mind, like, oh, I can't afford to do it. And I think that she was still in the hospital right after her last surgery when she told me from her hospital room, I've decided I'll go. I'll go with you. And so she
Wow.
got a passport to do this. And so, this whole new, like, new
Oh,
lease on life. And
yeah.
so there were a lot of moments with my mom there where it was just like, how is it possible that the two of us are here and that this is really happening? Like seeing so many things, like seeing her see so many things, like seeing things through her eyes
Yeah.
um, was remarkable to me. Those were very special moments. And but so many moments, moments with my boyfriend there and solo. There were so many places where it was just very awe-inspiring and just like, how
Wow.
have I found myself in this
Yeah. Wow, how beautiful. But speaking to the thing the point that we made earlier in this interview was how when you pursue what your soul wants you to do, you become an expander. So look what you
place?
made possible for your mom.
Yeah. Yeah. And she's telling everyone, she like went back to work last week and she's like, if your kid's telling you got to do something, you need to do it. And
Look at
she
that.
said like, oh my gosh, I wish we need to bring the whole family back. Now I know that we can't, because I taught her about like credit card reward miles and things like that. She's like, now I know how to do it. I'm like, yes.
That's amazing.
Let's go back.
You just expanded not just your mom's life, but her whole workplace
hope
is now
so.
thinking
so.
differently and thinking
Yeah.
that it's actually affordable. And
Yeah.
okay, if she can do it, maybe I could do it.
Yeah.
Maybe my kid's been nagging me to do it. Maybe I
And
should
not to wait. Yeah. And just
encourage
not to
them and
wait.
not to wait. Oh my God, that's incredible. And if you don't mind sharing ballpark, how much did that whole trip cost you in USD? Just a, like a,
Yeah, it's honestly hard for me. I need to sit down and really do all of the figuring because I kept a very, very obsessive budget while I was on the trip, but I was not including in that total budget the stuff I had paid for up front. So things
it.
like my plane tickets were free. I used credit card. I
good.
have
Yeah.
done like travel credit card churning.
Yeah.
So I used points for,
Okay.
which was awesome. But I bought like a Eurail pass that was a lot of money. And
Yeah.
I booked several Airbnbs up front.
Okay.
I stayed in a combination of hostels and in the more affordable countries, I would stay in some Airbnbs. Or like when my boyfriend joined me, we would split Airbnbs.
Yeah.
So I paid for a lot of those up front. So it's kind of like I don't have a great, I would have to combine the two. But on the ground, like once I was there, what I spent was around 12,000. That's
Okay.
including, I bought a lot of souvenirs towards the end.
Yeah, of course.
So that's including everything. Everything that I spent. I could have certainly done it for cheaper, but I think it was very much for me like I'm gonna make the most of this,
Of course. Yeah.
But I would
Yeah.
encourage someone, I think someone could absolutely do the trip for very easily for 10 or even like 8 or 9. I think someone could do the trip for less than I did if they wanted to, for sure.
Brilliant. Beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Kayla. Is there anything that you'd like to share before we wrap up today?
I can't think of anything else. This has been so much fun. Thank you so much for
Yeah,
having me.
of course, you captured the gist of this podcast. Just go for your dreams, listen to your intuition, and don't ridicule yourself or poo-poo yourself for wanting things that are out of the norm, or because this is how expansion happens. You follow your thing, and other people will follow their thing because you followed your thing, and this is how our impact on our communities have to, this is how it starts. So well done, and thank you for sharing your adventure, sharing your experience, and for being an expander for the people around you and a
Thank you so
pattern
much.
breaker as well.
I do have one more thing that
Oh
I just
yes,
thought.
of course.
I feel that for female travelers, for solo female travelers especially, there's a lot of there can be a lot of fear about safety and things like this. And one thing that I highly recommend, because I did not know this would be a thing that I would enjoy, and I ended up really enjoying this, is going on group tours. I had no idea that I would enjoy group tours, but there are so many wonderful organizations that do group tours that are full of solo travelers who are showing up by themselves.
So like-minded people.
Exactly. And
Safety
and
numbers,
it's such a
yeah.
great way to meet such interesting people from everywhere who are doing the same thing as you. When I was in Morocco back in 2019, that was through a group tour. I was the only American. It was so much fun. There were like 20 of us. It was amazing. I met people that I'm still very much in touch with.
Wow.
And then most of the 5 months that I just did around Europe, most of it I was alone. Then those 6 weeks I was with my boyfriend, and I was with my mom. But my boyfriend and I, for 2 weeks, we did a group tour around Turkey. We saw so much more, I think, of the country than we would have been able to see easily on our own. So just a word of support for anyone who's like, oh, I don't know about the idea
Group
of
tours are cool.
solo travel. Group tours are really cool.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know they were cool, but they're very cool.
Yeah, I did a few walking tours. They were free walking tours.
Oh,
I
yeah,
did them
and those
in
are great.
Oregon, in Portland,
Those are
in New
great.
York, bike tours in New Orleans. They're great because
Such a great
they're
way to meet people.
social. They're not like just drinking centric. They're like, you know, they were really, really
Absolutely.
good. Great way of meeting people.
Yeah.
You're right. Brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Kayla, and thank you for your, thank you for everything. And we'll catch you next time. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.